Is it too much to ask for just a little bit of accountability? In the world of politics, entitlement runs rampant. That's why so many people are in favor of things like term limits, because once these people get in a position of power, once they get in that seat or once they're put in that office, regardless of how things go, regardless of how many times they fail, they almost always choose to remain. If the virtue of self-accountability was truly baked into human DNA, we'd see hundreds, if not thousands of people resigning voluntarily every single year. But instead, you get Ronna Mcdaniel, who fails and fails and fails time again, runs the RNC as an organization directly into the ground, sabotaging election season after election season, stubbornly refusing to resign from that seat, and then finally at the last hour, overtime period 5, only once the pressure gets overwhelmingly powerful, then you finally choose to resign. Ronna Mcdaniel finally does it, probably 4 years too late. Let's have a conversation about it. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, friends, so it finally happened.
Chairwoman Ronna Mcdaniel is reportedly going to step down from her role next Friday, just days after Super Tuesday. ABC News obtained a statement from the chairwoman that says the RNC has historically undergone change once we have a nominee, and it has always been my intention to honor that tradition. I remain committed to winning back the White House and electing Republicans up and down the ballot in November. McDaniel reportedly says she will step down to, quote, allow our nominee to select a chair of their choosing. RNC has been under Ronna Mcdaniel's leadership for 7 years. Who the next leadership baton will be passed to, yet to be determined.
Ronna Mcdaniel will be out of the seat as chairwoman of the RNC officially on March 8th. I mean, it's an obvious cause for celebration, and while I think a positive tone is important moving forward, let's dwell on the negative for a little bit, shall we? Ronna Mcdaniel's been in that seat for nearly 8 years. So that's the 2018 election, the 2020 election, the 2022 election, and now a good chunk of the primary process in the 2024 election. She has been an utter disaster nearly throughout this entire process. You cannot count Ronna Mcdaniel's great successes on a single hand, because there are no great successes and therefore there's no hands. We've seen a groundswell of discontent, criticism, and calls for Ronna Mcdaniel's resignation basically since 2020 onward. If we're being generous, it was time to resign after 2022, yet she stubbornly stayed throughout the entire process. This is something that needs to be seen as unacceptable. It's something that simply cannot happen if a political party is to thrive or succeed at all. When candidates are using their airtime to essentially call for your resignation during the Republican debates, like Vivek Ramaswamy did,
we've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna Mcdaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party.
Well, it's probably time to consider the notion, rather than taking to Fox News, red boiling in the face like a damn tomato, throwing a hissy fit on air and further digging in your heels. It's been time for the Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell, Dick Cheney, Bush, Lindsey Graham faction to take a frickin' hint. The Republican Party cannot survive moving forward, pulling in two different directions. There cannot be 90% of the party driving the vehicle one way, with the minority faction jumping at the wheel like Cassidy Hutchinson accused Donald Trump of doing with the Secret Service agent, trying to turn the vehicle around. It simply cannot happen. Now, of course, the media is throwing a hissy fit that Ronna Mcdaniel is out to be replaced with a fresh new face handpicked by Donald Trump, and I believe the suggestion was to have Lara Trump as the co-chair. Donald Trump the fascist trying to install loyalists to use the RNC as his personal piggy bank. It's the most idiotic nonsense I've ever heard. You mean to tell me the current Republican presidential nominee, with over 90% support from the Republican Party, is going to install a loyalist to run the RNC essentially on his behalf to get him elected in an election year? Wow, sounds like fascism to me. No, dummies, that's literally the way it works. You know, Joe Biden has nothing but loyalists around him and puppet masters and aides who wipe his butt. I'd say Joe Biden's aides are his biggest and most personal loyalists. That's a-okay, but the moment the orange man has people working on his behalf to get elected and not working against him to sabotage his election election efforts, oh, well, that's fascism. It makes no sense. Ronna Mcdaniel was a complete disaster, soft on defending the president when he needed it most. I mean, for Pete's sakes, RNC Research on Twitter, the major social media arm of the RNC, almost hardly even utters the word Trump and almost never talks about the indictments. They spent more money propping up establishment candidates that the base wasn't interested in, instead of spending money in the most high-profile, important races, actively working against the party's leader and the majority consensus in the party. Ronna Mcdaniel has been an utter disaster, her track record nearly worse than Joe Biden's. And so of course it's time for some Trump loyalists. The RNC under Ronna Mcdaniel has been going broke, breaking records in all the wrong directions, setting record lows in fundraising hauls. And so maybe it's time to fix that, to generate a little bit of trust and enthusiasm at the RNC, to unite and connect two things that should be symbiotic. The RNC's end goal and the Trump campaign's end goal should be the same, getting Joe Biden out of office and BTFOing this slow creep towards communism. This kind of thing ought to happen more often, and hopefully with much less struggle. I mean, for Pete's sakes, the report that Ronna Mcdaniel was going to resign, I think hit the news cycle 2 weeks ago, and Ronna Mcdaniel at the time denied the rumor, even though she knew she was set to resign 2 weeks later. It's a constant fight against what's needed. If you're not with the majority consensus of the party, if your approval is in the gutter, if nobody wants you, I'm talking to you, Mitch McConnell, with your 6% approval rating, well then it's probably time to step down and let somebody who represents the popular view and the current political ambition to step in and take that seat. I know, crazy stuff. The world of politics, where you can run a country into the ground, yet stay in office for 30 years and have statues built of you. What an absolute farce, but enough of the negative. It's only positive moving forward. The grassroots element of the Trump movement might take control of the RNC, and if that happens, I wouldn't be surprised if Scott Presler all of a sudden somehow gets incorporated into the mix. Scott Presler plus RNC funding? I don't know about you guys, but that just sounds like a good match to me. And so I guess let's see what happens moving forward. Enough dwelling on the negative. Positive to come. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.